or the previous time he came to the apple tree, it was like 5 o'clock. Well, at 5:30, he come off the ledge up there and come on down with the wind because he could see until he was chewing on the apple to kind of, keep him from hearing anything. And I drew the bow and let him have it.
Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast, powered by Advanced Takedown Tree Stands, episode number 216. Chaplain Bill Vale. Stay ahead of the buck. First time stand magic. Please support our sponsors as they make this show possible. Today's show is sponsored by Advanced Takedown Tree Stands, the Horny Buck Seed Company, Covert Scouting Cameras, the Scent Lock Enforcer. Take control of your odor footprint with the Scent Lock Enforcer, your personal ozone generator, and Morse's Sporting Goods. Big Buck Registry is a virtual museum of hunting stories. We preserve a piece of Americana by interviewing and recording hunters about their hunts and experiences from across the country. And who knows, maybe we'll learn a thing or two along the way that'll help us take our hunt to the next level.
This is Art Helen from Art Helen Outdoors, Dodgeville, Wisconsin. Get ready to listen to another amazing interview with Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast.
Hi, this is Ben Rising with Whitetail Edge. Sit tight because you're about to listen to the best podcast that you possibly can listen to, the Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast.
Hey everybody, this is Mia Anstein of Mac Outdoors. You are about to push play on one of my favorite podcasts, Big Buck Registry.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. My name is Jay, and for Dusty Phillips and Jim Keller, I'd like to welcome you to the show. I suspect that you are somewhere in a tree stand right now, if you're like me. As this show airs, I'm actually in Maryland, hoping something crosses my path. Hopefully you're doing the same thing. A couple of things I would like you to do for us, if you could. If you would, please, go check us out on iTunes. Subscribe, leave us a review. We want to try and push this podcast up the charts. I know we have a lot of listeners out there, and I need you to take some action. I need you to go and leave a review on iTunes and subscribe to the show. If you do subscribe, that'll give you access to this show each and every week with a notification on your iPhone. If you're not on an iPhone, don't worry about it. But you can access this show on YouTube in its entirety, on Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio. It's all right there for you to grab and listen as you please. This week's show is an interview with Bill Vale. Bill came highly recommended from quite a few different listeners of the show. So we reached out to Bill like we do for our listeners. And we're going to bring you, as we do each and every week, another amazing deer hunter as we reach out to those master deer hunters from across the country and interview them and dissect their strategies and habits so that you can use those too, and hopefully with the success that they do. We're going to talk to Bill in just a second, but before we do, let's turn to Jim Keller with the Deer News.
For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News. Our first story, Hunters, Government, Industry at Odds over Deer Urine. This story was originally featured on the ABC News website and was reported by Mary Esch. Proposed regulations would add New York to a growing list of states and Canadian provinces banning deer urine lures in an effort to prevent the spread of chronic wasting disease. The disease is similar to so-called mad cow disease, which affects cattle. Both diseases are caused by infectious proteins called prions, which are believed to be shed in saliva, feces, and urine and can contaminate forage plants and build up in the soil. Not only does this horrible disease kill animals slowly, but wild white-tailed deer hunting represents a $1.5 billion industry in the state. Department of Environmental Conservationist Commissioner Basil Sagos said in releasing a draft plan to control it last month. Since the disease was first recognized in captive deer in Colorado about 50 years ago, it has slowly spread to 24 states and 2 Canadian provinces. States have spent millions of dollars trying to halt it. Wisconsin even hired sharpshooters to kill deer in an infected area. Wasting disease was discovered in a handful of wild and captive white-tailed deer in central New York in 2005, prompting the state to enact measures to halt it. They included a feeding ban to avoid concentrating deer in one area, a prohibition on hunters bringing deer carcasses from infected states into New York, and a ban on deer farms importing livestock. It's the only state to have eliminated the disease after it was found in wild populations, Sagos said. Now the state is taking public comments through September 15th on additional rules, the most controversial being the ban on scent lures using natural deer urine. Christine Schuler, a Cornell University biologist who has been researching chronic wasting disease since 2002 and helped develop New York's response plan, said there's no commercially available test to ensure urine products are free of disease prions. Until this product is proven safe, I don't think hunters should risk contaminating their favorite hunting spot, Schuler said. We can't put the genie back into the bottle once it gets out there. Hurricane Harvey displaces countless animals in Texas. This story was featured on the ABS-CBN News website and was reported by Cheryl Picchio. As the full extent of the damage from Hurricane Harvey in Texas and Louisiana starts to become clear, indications of the impact on wild and domestic animals has ecologists and farmers concerned, with countless animals now abandoned or homeless. An estimated 600,000 animals were killed or stranded during Hurricane Katrina in 2005, and that could easily happen again with Hurricane Harvey, which has caused massive flooding here. Houston also contains the most populated and diverse wild animal ecosystem in Texas. Deer, wild hogs, raccoons, and armadillos are the most populous wild animals within the Harvey-hit region. In some areas, the floodwaters reach levels that would make it difficult or impossible for animals to survive. Displaced reptiles pose a threat to public safety. Alligators and poisonous snakes have been encountered with greater frequency, with floodwaters carrying them into suburban areas. There is also great concern for cows and other livestock who are threatened by the rising waters. For Texas ranchers, the cost for the loss of a herd of cattle could reach several $1 million. Animal shelters throughout the state are overwhelmed to keep up with the sheer number of pets and other animals in need. An estimated 3,000 additional animals are expected to be sheltered. Hundreds of unclaimed and unidentifiable animals had already been flown to animal centers in other states to make room for the next wave of pets displaced by the hurricane. Public meetings set for deer-related bovine TB monitoring in Indiana. This story was originally featured on the Outdoor Wire website. The public can learn about government efforts to monitor deer in Franklin and Fayette counties for bovine tuberculosis at 2 public meetings in September. Those meetings are at 6 p.m. on September 7th at Franklin County High School and at 9:30 a.m. on September 12th at Franklin County Government Center. The meetings are a joint effort between the DNR Division of Fish and Wildlife and State Board of Animal Health. The Division of Fish and Wildlife plans to establish a new bovine tuberculosis surveillance zone in those counties. Bovine tuberculosis is a chronic bacterial disease that affects primarily cattle but can be transmitted to any mammal species. In 2016, the disease showed up and a deer called for testing from a Franklin County cattle farm affected by bovine tuberculosis. Surveillance involves testing lymph nodes from the necks of deer harvested by hunters and voluntarily submitted for evaluation. In the surveillance zone, the DNR is asking hunters to help collect samples from between 450 and 1,200 deer. The emphasis will be on bucks that are 2 years old or older. If sufficient samples are not collected through voluntary submission by hunters, DNR will use sharpshooters to remove additional bucks for sampling after the season closes. Hunters who submit a deer for testing will have their names entered into a drawing for an additional buck privilege that can be used the next hunting season. 10 hunters will win an extra buck privilege. A larger bovine tuberculosis surveillance zone established for the 2016 hunting season resulted in the collection of more than 2,000 samples. None tested positive for the disease. That concludes this week's edition of the Big Buck Registry's Deer News. For links to the stories featured this week, please check our show notes at www.bigbuckregistry.com. If you have any ideas for future topics or have any questions about any of these topics, please email me at jim@bigbuckregistry.com. For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News.
Well, thanks to Jim Keller with the Deer News. You know, every hunter dreams of shooting a trophy buck, of looking down on a cool, crisp morning and seeing a massive set of antlers walking below his or her tree. Master Bowhunter Bill Vale's landmark book brings into perspective the order of survival. Bill likes to hunt areas where the deer are under extreme pressure, like Bill's hunting area in Calhoun County, Michigan, where there's some of the highest numbers of deer hunter per square mile than any other place in the country. Bill also employs the solar-lunar forces, the perigee and the apogee, and the light the moon reflects govern the movement and instincts of the big bucks and the timing of the rut from year to year. Bill shares with us his aggressive tactics, secrets, and his field-tested strategies that have been proven successful after 35 years of hunting for pressured big bucks. So without further ado, here is Bill Vale. Chaplain Bill Vale, welcome to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. How are you, my friend?
Hey, real good. Jay, how are you?
Oh, quite well. Thank you, Bill. I was getting geared up to ask you a bunch of questions. I hope you're okay with that.
Oh, absolutely.
Your name came up in conversation with one of our listeners. They sent in a request to get Bill Vale on the show. So just so you know, you're being thought of out there in our community.
You mean not everybody is mad at me?
No. There are some people that are not mad at you, Bill.
Okay, I'm just kidding.
Let's talk about you, Bill. Where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
Well, actually, I grew right up here in Battle Creek. I started hunting in my early teens. I'm 62 years old, so I've been out there pounding the Michigan turf for 40 plus years. But it's not so much, the deer that I've shot and all that. It's where I've shot them. And my county, Calhoun County, Michigan, hands down, has been known for a long time to be the highest pressured state as far as hunting goes in the United States.
Right.
Inside of Michigan, Calhoun County has more hunters per square mile than anywhere in the world. So the pressure here, people just can't imagine. I mean, there's very few sanctuaries, and thank God for the ones we have. And people just, it's unbelievable. I mean, opening day, I used to be horrified to go to the woods, but anymore, I've used it to my advantage. I strictly bow hunt. I don't gun hunt at all, and I've shot multiple big bucks during gun season with my bow, using pressure to my advantage. So it's actually, if you look at it, for every negative, if you turn it, you can turn it around on them and use it against them.
Right. That's a good point right there. Is that, there's always an antithesis. There's always a yin and a yang. There's always a push and a pull, right?
Yeah.
So there's
I say that is in, I put it in my book. I put every action has a reaction.
Exactly.
And I was talking about in nature, though.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right. So this theory goes over and over. So the deer are there. They're just not where everybody else is, sounds like there are a lot of people. And how do you get around? I don't know. So I'm very interested to hear how you tactically go about this in a second. So you grew up there, and what was life like growing up?
I spent a lot of time outdoors as a kid, probably a lot more than the average boy. My parents' answer, all us brothers was outside, because we were wild when we were younger. But so I grew up a lot outdoors, and then when I got into my 20s, I had an outdoor grapevine business where I'd go out, and for 28 years I pulled vines out of the trees, wild vines, would carry them back to the house and weave them up into all sorts of creations. And this constant exposure to the outdoors just began to envelop me, and I just somehow I just became in tune with it. It's all I can, that's how I can explain it.
Okay.
But being able to feel the rhythm of the woods and things like that.
When did you feel like you were first in tune with the woods?
Well, sometimes I still wonder if I am today, but I can tell, it's like, I don't know, usually a couple of days when I'm getting close on a big one, I'll start having butterflies, and, it's almost as if I can sense it's coming, but not really. I mean, when they show up, they show up. Most of the deer that I've shot in my career have been on the very first trip in.
Interesting you say that. I'm hearing this theme more and more, so we'll have to get into that a little bit more.
You mean the first time on Stand Magic?
The first time on Stand Magic. That's exactly
right.
All
right. There's a lot more to do with that than meets the eye. For instance, if you've been doing surveillance and you've got you've been comparing your camera photos back to the moon and weather, and you've got a real good idea when he's going to be there, well, then, you just form a plan and then work your plan, plan your work and work your plan.
Right.
And tactically, basically speaking, my whole thing in buck hunting is to get ahead of the buck. Everybody sees sign and they set up over it, rubs, scrapes, and all that. And that stuff is just old news. The bucks know that they've left that sign there, and not that they can think, but they're instinctively, they know what this big scrapes and stuff that they leave there with their scent, and they know that there could be predators nearby. Right. And this is one of the reasons why the bucks, the pressured deer, and even unpressured deer will do the J-hook that you wanted to talk about.
Okay.
As in, it's a defense maneuver that they all pull. See, the reason how I figured this out was, I live in Michigan, and every year we get tons of snow. Well, when you can go out and follow hundreds of big bucks backwards and forwards after the season, and you see how they go into their bed and how they bed, how much they move around during the middle of the day, where did he go during the day, and then how did he leave at night, and then you measure that all back against the wind, the weather, the barometer, the moon, and you'll start picking up a bunch of common denominators, which will give you the right time to pick him off as he comes in there. You'll be there ahead of him. See, many times when you can't kill a buck because you can't enter in the evening, because he's either can see where the ambush point is, or he can smell it, or what have you, then I go in the early morning with no intention of shooting a deer in the morning or the afternoon. But if he stays there, if he comes in and lays down and then comes over to me in the middle of the day, then I'll get a shot at him. And I've had that happen. I mean, that's my main way of hunting, is bedding area hunting and catching them moving around at midday.
Gotcha. Okay. So let's go back to your personal life a little bit, and we'll get more into the J-hook maneuver in a second. When did the chaplain part of your life come into play?
The night of my 40th birthday, I won the city championship for darts here in town, and I was an alcoholic and having all kinds of problems in my life because of it. And however, as horrible as a problem as it was, it didn't stop me from hunting. And for a lot of years, it didn't seem to interfere with it. But now I've been sober for 16 years, and I wouldn't touch a drop of alcohol because it's not that I disagree with anybody else that drinks it. It's just not for me because I have a weakness toward it. So I just stay away from it.
Sure.
The other thing is, I noticed that my wife and I had lots of trouble fighting over hunting. And it was the amount of time that I was spending. Well, after 40 years of being there, I developed my calendar. You can literally hunt half as much and score twice as often. And so you can spread the time out, and there's basically 2 10-day periods a year that if you don't get him during one of those 2 10-day periods, the chances of you getting him around here are pretty slim. Or one of the other sweet spots on my calendar. But in the last 30 years, Rick, all of my people that I'm connected with, none of us have taken a buck outside the time frame of the dark period every single year.
Okay. All right. We need to know more about that. All right. So let's talk about some deer hunting strategies.
Okay.
And stuff. Before we get to the nitty gritty here, what does hunting mean to you? Like, what's your philosophy of hunting? What does it mean to you? What should it mean to everybody?
Well, basically my philosophy on hunting is to pass it on and try to pay it forward. I found out way late in life that selfishness was my nature, but helping others is what my purpose is. I have a organization called the Circle of Masters, It's a group of 12 of the, in my opinion, the most brilliant deer hunting minds in the country. And, I said, I was sitting there thinking, there's so much to learn about hunting that there's more than any one man can learn in any one lifetime.
Right.
And so I got to thinking, about other masters in other parts of the country. And, and I started running into guys and slowly making friends. And now I have this wonderful group of guys that, if you can stump these guys with a question, help yourself, because I can't. I'm one of the masters. The head master is a guy named Michael Yates from Tennessee.
Okay. All right. I was just going to ask you, so as people are listening to this, they're going to wonder who are the 12 on the list. So Michael Yates, who else is on that list?
Well, Michael is just an absolute genius. He hunts and kills mature bucks off the ground pretty much at will. And he's like me. Like, I haven't been winded in 8 years that I know of. Michael hasn't been winded either. But he does have the advantage of elevation because he hunts in the mountains. But he's still, when it comes to anything that I know of, he's just a constant source of positive reinforcement. He's somebody you can check your biology against. And that's another thing I was going to say. In my philosophy on hunting is study the biological facts of the animal that you're pursuing. Because to understand their biological needs is to understand their movements and what they're moving for and how come they have to move.
Gotcha. Okay. Bill, who else is on your 12-person list?
Well, of course, the guy that's in the book with me, my buddy Rick Grostefan.
Okay.
And then there's a guy in Ohio, Scotty Rathfelder. Then we have Jeremy from Missouri. We have Russell Guthrie from Pennsylvania. We have Robbie from Massachusetts. We have another guy named Jay from North Carolina, okay. and we have a lot of other what I call submasters that are guys that they really know their stuff, and if I can't get a hold of one of my regular guys, why I can call up and chat with these guys, because to me, you have to have the science behind something and know that it's correct in order to go in and practice it and exercise it and try to pull it off.
Right. Gotcha. Okay. So there is a list. There's a book that has the list of your 12 people that you consider to be some of the best deer hunters in the country.
Well, I'm going to say this. They have master level skills, and they're brilliant in every, like I can just give you an example. I've got we do cyber scouting from the air, and I've done things that I don't think I've never heard of anybody else on the planet ever doing. And what that is that I regularly find deer for people out of state without leaving my living room.
Very interesting. All right. So we
there's a case on YouTube. If you look into Ryan Weston's 160-inch gut shot buck from Wisconsin, he called me and I told him where to look and how to wait on the deer and whatnot, and they ended up recovering it, and they recognized me in the post. Said thank you, So,
gotcha.
And I'm colorblind. I started out having a defect, and it turned into a blessing.
All right. So we have some very interesting deer hunting strategies and topics to talk about here.
Okay.
Let's get into the 2-block strategy that you were talking about. You said and there's a stretch of time each year that you can systematically expect to kill a deer, the deer you're hunting, maybe in that time frame. Let's go deeper into that. What is that all about?
Okay. All right. To begin with, you guys can look at all this, but by looking at the tidal times, you'll understand that all these calendars that are out there, notice how none of them say anything about perigee and apogee. They don't even consider perigee and apogee. The other day when we had the eclipse, the moon was at a certain distance from the sun to cause that effect, because you see the moon travels, I think it's 250,000 miles away. It looks smaller. It doesn't reflect as much light, which reflected light and ambient light plays huge in the role of light-sensitive bucks. If you don't know what you're doing with the light, you might as well hang it up. For instance, it's much harder to kill a deer coming out of an open swamp with no canopy coming into a dark woods than it is to be in a dark wood, or to have them be in a dark woods and you be out in the open canopy, because they think it's dark in the woods, and then say there's a small break, a power line that they have to cross. They're not aware of that one spot right there that's light enough to shoot them. Now, I'm not talking about shooting in dim light. I'm just saying that legally speaking, during civil twilight, because we have civil, nautical, and astronomical twilight, and the animals are crepuscular, meaning they move during the twilight period at each end of the day. That's when they're wired to move.
Right.
So basically, ambush during twilight has happened a few times, but for the most part, generally speaking, if the buck's going to show, he shows with the herd or right after the herd. But let's talk about that, like you said, that 10-day period.
Yep.
The 10-day period is centered around the new moon. That's the dark day.
Okay.
So 3 days before the day of the new moon and 3 days after the new moon and the day of, there's no wrong time to be in the woods. The bucks will be on their feet and moving all day long. Now, I'm not saying they'll be traveling, but a lot of them will be. But a lot of them will be active, chasing does within the confines of their daytime safety area.
Okay. So that's the new moon. So that's 3 days prior, 3 days after, plus the new moon day.
But 3 days prior to the 3 days prior, in other words, 6 days prior to the new moon, on those 3 days, the biggest monarchs in the woods will be on the move then, because what they sense the coming rut first. The other subordinates don't sense it until after the big boys start hooking up. So by the time the rut really gets swinging, I don't like to hunt the rut, because you never know where your big buck's going to run into a hot doe. And if they just keep having hot does, he could spend the entire rut someplace else.
Right.
So what I like is when the pressure's on, because then I know what they're doing, how they're going to behave. They're not going to be, just wandering all over the place looking for does. Gotcha.
Okay. All right. So that's 1 10-day time block that you pay attention
in October. If you can hunt in September, there's biologists have proven that a deer can breed for 6 months out of the year, from August 1st to March 31st. Embryonic studies are dead on, man, and they can take it right back to the day. And anytime a doe reaches 70 pounds, pop, she comes into heat.
Right.
And so that can happen at any time, depending on when they were born in the springtime. And that's where you get these December does coming into heat. Also, deer that didn't take will cycle in 27 and about 3/4 days. They'll start to cycle again. But the thing about this is the dark period is going to accompany any one of the 4 phases each year, and each year it's going to be different. In other words, this year, the dark period in Michigan is going to land on the 22nd. And so 3 days before the 22nd will be a week into gun season when the dark period hits.
Right. Okay.
And so I look for the shotgun hunters to have a pretty good harvest this year. So I'm hoping to get my buck during the October. As a matter of fact, the last few bucks I've killed in October.
Okay, gotcha.
During that dark period phase of time. There's two other really, really good time frames, and that's the third quarter is 4 days after the third quarter, are really good in the morning. And then 3 to 4 days before the first quarter is dynamite evening hunting.
And when you say,
don't want to miss that, because that's coming off the dark period.
When you say quarter, you're talking about the quarter of the moon.
Well, the moon will be half full, but that has first quarter has nothing to do with the shaded part of the moon. It's
the period.
A quarter moon is actually a half a moon.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay. And then during the full moon, people say, oh, it's terrible. Well, it is at each end of the day. But if you can get settled into a bedding area early in the morning, the deer will come in and settle down, and 6 hours later, they'll get up and they'll be running all over the place, active as all get out. My buddy Greg, I did his property, and we turned into real good friends. And his very first trip out, he went in and shot one at 12:30 on the new moon, a 140-inch buck, and then he got a 135 or something during the dark period the following month, towards the middle of the day. When I go hunting most of the time, and I'm doing my serious hunting, I hunt all day. And to tell you the truth, I see a lot more activity during the middle of the day than I do at each end of the day.
Interesting. Why do you think that is?
Well, because they're cooped up inside their bedding area. And, a lot of times a buck may come in the early morning and say, say it's 30 degrees out or something like that. He's going to want to bed in the sunshine. And then by noon, if it's warmed up or something like that, then he might be a little warm, and if moon time overlaps with this period of uncomfortable from the temperature, why, it'll cause him to get up and seek out nearby shade. Okay. I've ambushed a couple of them setting up in the northeast quadrants because the sun shines. They can get sun or shade in a northeast quadrant of any large expanse.
Gotcha.
Down in Illinois, that's where they tell people to look for the sheds and everything because of the, winter time and where the sun's going to shine and stuff.
Okay. All right. Gotcha. All right. So if this is confusing to people, and it could be unless they read more about it, what is that one time frame, that what 10-day period is the best if people just want to start there?
Well, it's always going to be in November, but as far as the amount of does being bred, the DNR is right. The breeding will peak in November, but it could be the first week and the first quarter. It could be the second week and the third quarter. It could be the third week and the full moon and the fourth week, the new moon. And from one year to the next now, if you have perigee, where the moon is cycled 250,000 miles closer to the moon, to Earth, then it looks a lot bigger. It reflects a lot more light. The difference between high and low tide will be like 2 foot and 12 foot. Where during apogee, the difference between high and low tide is like 2 foot and 2 foot, or 2 foot and 2.5 foot.
Okay.
Very little change. So when the gravitational pulls kick up because of perigee, it can move billions of gallons. Now, to put this into perspective, let's take fishing real quick here to explain this.
Sure. When
the moon swings into position, microlife in the lake is affected first. After the microlife comes the really teeny tiny little things that eat that. Then comes the tiniest of the minnows. After that, the stimulation of seeing the minnows and the activity, because the moon begins to stimulate the panfish. Panfish come in at the same time. Outside, up in the air, you'll notice that the insects, the bats, the birds, and the squirrels, all in the same type category, are all active at once as well. And then all of a sudden, moon time hits, and here come the predator fish in. So when all the other calendars that have been sold out there, yeah, they're giving you the times from the National Observatory, Washington, D.C., and they're dead on, but they're not giving you any lag time for weight. My calendar is set for a deer weighing between 250 and 300 pounds.
Gotcha. All right. So is there a way to figure this out? Like, is there a time where if we're just sitting back, we're trying to figure out when should I hunt each year?
You can get these calendars in enough advance time to tell your boss, hey, I want these 10 days off and I want these 10 days off, or whatever you have time for. And if you did nothing more but hunted all day long on those 10 days off, I would bet dollars to donuts you'd kill your buck every year, as long as you're not just going out there and expecting it to happen without doing any homework. But if you zeroed in on a buck, for instance, let me give you a quick example how I would work it.
Okay.
Knowing that the evening movement is going to peak on the night of the evening moon. The moon will be half full and at the north-south line right before dark. Okay, an hour before dark. That's where the moon will be, dead overhead. Okay? But in my dead overhead, I'm talking about where I've already did the calculation, okay? Mm-hmm. So let's say that early on, I saw a big buck enter the field or come to the edge of the field and kind of hang out on a run and then go back in and just real cagey about coming out. And I know by putting the camera there that he's coming out there quite often with a southwest wind.
Okay.
What I would do is I would go over there and prepare the location, preferably during a rain shower, so that all my scent gets washed away as I'm doing it. But once the stand is prepared, I would wait until the 4 nights before the first quarter, and then I would move in. Now, if you get a storm front, you get an overlap with barometric pressure, which incidentally, between 29.0 and 3.10, or 3.10, is the sweet spot on the barometer. The deer will be on their feet if it crosses those marks, either rising or falling. So you can work the barometer overlap. So like if you're having a storm front that's coming in on Friday in the middle of the night, the deer are going to move really, really good Friday night. Everybody's probably pretty aware of this. But if you were to add a precipitation on top of that, it could trigger scrape. Time to hunt over the scrapes.
Okay. All right. Very cool. All right. Let's move on to your J-hook philosophy. What is it? What is J-hook to you, and why is it important to us?
All right. This would make sense to you. Do you know why a big buck will tailwind across a wide open field, but absolutely refuse to through heavy cover?
I do not.
All right, let me tell you why. If he walks with the wind through heavy cover, he's allowing his scent to arrive to the nearby waiting predators before he gets there. He's setting himself up to get hit. Okay? Mm-hmm. So, but across an open field, like a winter wheat field where he can see a long ways, he'll run right across that baby using generally, it'll be coming either over their right shoulder or over their left shoulder. And here's the first type of J-hook. You might as well get the tailwind out of the way first.
Okay.
But let's say a buck is walking along a strip of cover, and the wind is blowing from the cover toward him, but it's hitting him over his right shoulder and angling on through. So as he walks by the cover, after he walks by the deer, he'll pick it up. Have you got me on that so far?
Yep, gotcha.
Okay. Then if he smells a hot doe, he'll turn a hard right there, mm-hmm. and go dead into the wind, zigzagging, and go right to her. That's the first kind of J-hook.
Gotcha.
The second kind of J-hook is is a nose wind approach. And these are the ones that I like to pull, because what they're going to do, let's basically take a serial bowl ridge situation where we have a bowl that's surrounded by a high ridge. Mm-hmm. A lot of guys just find ripped open scrapes years ago and try to hunt right over them, and they'd never shoot anything. As soon as we moved to the high ground, we started getting shots left and right, because what these bucks do is, especially if you've got ability, the downwind plus high ground,
yep,
you look about 75 to 100 yards downwind on the predominant downwind side of the scrapes, and you should find a rub, and it should be in the scent stream, the west or a northwest wind. That's telling you where he smelled the scrape and got excited and banged a tree. Gotcha. You want to sit 20 yards crosswind to that and parallel him. In other words, if the wind is out of the west and the buck is traveling from the south to the north,
yep,
and he's trying to smell something out of the west, he's going to walk along the top of that ridge, and when he gets in the scent stream, if he smells something, the scrape excites him, he'll rub the tree, then he'll walk just a little bit further. That's to make sure that there's nothing laying for him on the other side of the scrape. Then he'll take a hard left and walk right directly into it. He's already checked it. He
Gotcha.
knows there's nothing there.
Gotcha. Okay. That makes sense. All right.
But sitting over the scrape, you're more than likely going to get, because you're sitting there on pins and needles. He comes up on the high ground and you're in a hole way up high in a tree.
Yep.
You're at eye level. It's not a good idea. But I'll tell you what is a good trick. When you set up for these scrapes, realizing that one of the things that's going to trigger their activity is precipitation that washes the scrape. Well, precipitation a lot of times comes out of the southeast and the northeast around here. Mm-hmm. So what I do is I surprise the buck by setting up an east location. But then when he comes in, he's used to the westerly location. If he by habit takes that trail, he's had it, because once he circles, he's going to come in and he hasn't got a chance of picking me up.
Right.
You know, because I'm on the other side. I set up on the other side of the scrape in case he circled downwind that way up on high ground.
Gotcha.
So no matter what, if you're on the high ground, if he's making a circle to try to scent check that thing, all you got to do is be crosswind of the scent stream that the scrape is blowing to up the ridge, crosswind by shooting distance, and when he turns the corner right there, you'll get your broadside shot.
Gotcha. All right. Very cool. That's an excellent description of jay hooking.
But they do it not only at scrapes, at their bed, when they approach a feeder, a bait pile, any like an apple tree or something like that, anything where they're having to, kind of stick their neck out a little, they're going to pass downwind and do the scent check before they come in.
Gotcha. All right. So they don't use it. They're scent checking a lot. It's not just a doe, for example. It could be a bunch of different things. Here where I hunt, I have not seen even a doe tailwind, and I can't even remember the last time, because they just don't do it here, because they know that they're vulnerable if they do. Yeah.
They use, and here's the thing, I don't sit with the wind in my face. One of the biggest things that I do different than most hunters is I blow right at the deer. And guys are like, well, how do you do that? But it is a deadly tactic, and is one of the most deadly tactics that I have in my bag of tricks. And let me give you a couple examples of how I might do this. Let's say we have a river that's running east and west, okay? And let's say that we have a north wind.
Okay.
I would float across the river, go within shooting distance of the edge of the river, straight in line with the wind. So I'm using with the wind entry. And this, by the way, is so much better than a downwind entry that everybody for years have been telling you, and I'll tell you why in a second. But anyway, you want to sit right there now you're blowing back toward the bedding area, but you're only 1 scent string. So if the buck don't hit that scent string, what'll happen is the deer will all gravitate to the north, which is where? Toward the river. Once they get at the river, they're stalled on the edge and now begin to meander up and down the edge.
Right.
And now when they meander by me, I'm downwind.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay?
Yep. All right. Any other examples of J-hooking?
Well, I do know that they will change their hook from day to day. For instance, a fawn, when its first born, the mother refuses to take that fawn 2 days in a row on the same trail to that bed because a predator could smell it 2 days in a row.
Okay.
So ever since day one, the buck's been taught by his mother to alter how he comes to his bed. So to see a buck do a particular thing with a southwest wind does not mean the next time there's a southwest wind, he's going to repeat that behavior exactly. As a matter of fact, I would count on him not repeating it.
Gotcha. All right.
And so therefore you want to figure out, well, where might he go? Generally, if they feel suspicious, they'll make a wider circle. If they're real comfortable, they'll make a tight circle.
Gotcha. All right. Good stuff. Really good stuff, Bill. I'm enjoying this.
I'm glad you like it. I mean, it took me I want to add right here, Jay, that I hunt from extremely high tree stands.
Okay.
I'm a 35-foot, 40-foot guy, and that's probably why I haven't been winded in 8 years that I know of.
Right.
And I do a lot of stands where I call blowovers. Like, here's another perfect example of blowing at the deer. Let's say you're along a river and it makes a curve, a bend, and you can fix it to where the wind is going to blow from land right straight up the middle of the river.
Okay. Gotcha.
All right. Now the deer coming down either side of the river have the wind in their face, but they can't pick you up because of the buffer of the water. And they'll walk right to you because they have a nose-wind advantage. See, a big buck don't mind leaving his bed in daylight hours if he's got things on his side. But if he's sitting there going to have to tailwind out into a place that he feels dangerous, it's just his instincts will just keep him down until after dark.
Right. Gotcha. Very good. Very good stuff. All right. So I want to go back to something you mentioned in the beginning.
Okay.
And maybe explain to me how you do this. You said that you could tell where a buck is from your living room simply by doing some, I forget what you used, the word you used, by doing some visualizations of topographical or aerials.
Well, let me explain to you what it is.
Okay.
I have what's known as the wind rule. And this is biological fact that whenever you jump a deer, surprise a deer, and especially wound a deer, in the first 10 seconds of escape, the animal can go in absolutely any direction. But as soon as he can, he will break into the prevailing wind and quarter into the prevailing wind and leave out of there. And he will continue going into the wind until he finds a place to bed down. Now, let's say that you've gut shot this deer and he's run, say, 800 yards and he's bedded down. And the wind was southwest when you shot him. That night, about midnight, a storm blows in out of the northwest and there's rain, okay? And then at 3 o'clock in the morning, the wind switches again, okay? Mm-hmm. So we come back the next day and you're walking along and you come to the first bed and there's no blood or anything. In this case, I had seen him lay down there. And then we knew that right after the rain, the wind had switched to that other direction. And so we went in that direction now, and we found a bed with blood leaving it. Now, that told us he left after the storm. The storm didn't end until 4 in the morning. So now we know he was alive at 4 and well, and he was headed west. Mm. And so, and then they give me all this information, and then I look at the map and find usually what people do backwards is they try to look at the thickest and hardest to search stuff when the buck will be taking the path of least resistance.
Right. Sure. We've heard that.
If he's going uphill or downhill, depending on how bad he's hurt. But like, here's one I helped a guy with that he shot a buck in woodlot A.
Okay.
The buck ran into woodlot B. They trailed it from woodlot A to woodlot B, and it run into woodlot C. They decided to come back in the morning. The wind did a 180 about face. They went in there the next morning, jumped the buck, and continued to search on out, and the blood trail just stopped, and they thought they had lost the deer. I told them, go back and search this woodlot. They said, we already have. I said, I'm aware of that. Humor me and please go search it. And they walked in there, and there was their buck. See, what had happened is when jumping the second time, the wind had switched. So he turned around and went right back the way he came into a woodlot that had already been searched. Those guys would have never looked in that woodlot again because in their mind, they'd searched that out. He's not there.
Right.
So, and then 2 years ago, I found a big 10-point over here for a guy, but that was boots on the ground. But they looked for him, a whole bunch of guys, dogs, everything else. They looked for him for a week before they called me, and I found him by myself in 2 days.
That's excellent. Very cool.
It's just knowing their behavior. Once you see them doing it, and we see what's a huge advantage, Michigan hunters, get out and spend your time in the snow. Find a big track, follow it, jumping, and give him some time, and then go see what he does. There's just nothing like, seeing step for step where a big buck goes. And take a tape measure with you, because the key to figuring out if this is the same buck in snow is taking his right front foot and measuring to his back left foot and to his back right foot. And if those two measurements match on any given time in the woods, then that's him. Because a lot of times big tracks can fool you. But I take a tape measure into the woods with me everywhere I go. It's one of my most valuable tools.
Gotcha. All right. Priceless advice right there. Absolutely priceless.
The wind room, like I'll be tracking along on a buck into the wind with some guys, and I'll say, hold it. And they'll say, what? I said, after they'd looked all day for it, I said, the wind was in the southeast. I said, I want you to go to Last Blood. He said, I'm right there now, Bill. I said, here's the plan. You take the path of least resistance into the southeast. Take one guy with you to follow you and look for blood. But you just follow the easiest going into the southeast. And stay out of the heavy cover, the rough going. He's hurt bad. He's not going to be plowing through that stuff. And I said, if you don't find him because he had a lit knot, I told him, have everybody climb a tree wherever they're at up a little bit and overscan the swamp. You might get lucky and spot the knot. But basically, he did what I said and walked right into the deer.
Okay. Why did you pick the southeast? Was that just relative to the terrain that you had analyzed?
No, that was the way the wind was blowing when he shot it.
Gotcha. Okay. Makes sense.
See, the wind rule means that the deer is going to, at very worst, it's something that takes a little bit to get, but they will absolutely do that every single time. I've never tracked a deer that that did not follow that rule, because you see, they're being chased. They want to go into the wind to smell danger out in front, and what they'll do is they'll bed on the edge of the field and watch their back trail. So you can't get up on them.
Right. Gotcha. All right. Very, very good. So I'm curious to know about your gear. Like, what gear do you bring with you in the woods? It sounds like you're I don't know if you're a scent control nut like a lot of us, or if you just plan on being up so high it doesn't matter. But I'm curious to bring.
No, I use a product called Lavalin, and it's in the women's deodorant department. It's a 2 herbs from Israel. You put this stuff on your hair growth areas, and see, it used to be called pit stop deodorant. And Paul, I don't know if you guys remember Paul Bruner from Screaming Eagle and Gene and Barry Wenzel.
Sure.
Those guys all used pit stop for years and are still using it, but they're probably using Lavalin. So I bought the last 30 containers of it they had, heard they went out of business, and now all of a sudden they've reappeared, and it's real cheap. It was like $30 a container. Now it's only $13. But you just spread it on all your hair growth areas. I shave my hair down close and do my scalp. That's a big offender. Your toes, your groin, your pits, your chest, the center of your back. The next day, you shower it off, and when you get out of the shower, you apply it to your entire body. And you will not be able to smell yourself, your armpits, nothing for a minimum of 10 days. And you can actually go hunting without showering.
Really?
See, it has a tendency, this inhibits bad bacteria growth and helps good bacteria growth. The good bacteria, there's good and bad bacteria. What it does is it has a tendency to weaken the bad bacteria and strengthen the good bacteria.
Okay.
And so I don't know if a lot of guys are aware of this, but after your clothes are completely clean, you can sweat like a pig going to your stand, and there won't be any odor the first sweat. Them clothes have to dry and then be hit by the sweat moisture again. Then comes the odor.
Okay. Gotcha.
So if you're clean going in, you don't have to worry that you sweat. Now, I highly recommend the fishnet underwear. The fishnet underwear you can get from Wiggy's, and that's what I wear. And it turns your moisture into a vapor and keeps the wet or moist clothing away from your body. And it just works like crazy, both in hot and cold weather, to keep your body temperature regulated because it breathes so well.
Gotcha. So the name of this deodorant is called Lavalin, or it's what's in it?
Yeah, it's Lavalin. It's 2 herbs from Israel.
Okay.
And it's all natural, cannot hurt you, and they grind it up and make it into a cream. It does have a small bit of odor when you put it on, but it's like a refreshing, clean. I can't explain it. Very, very. I use it year round now. I quit using cakey deodorants and messy, all that stuff. This stuff here, you put it on, you get in the shower and just shower off with your green hunting soap there.
Yep.
And I swear you could go out and chop wood and just wear that sweatshirt all day long. And when you're done, you can try to smell your armpit, I guess.
Yeah, sure,
and
right.
You will not be able to smell it.
Gotcha. And you're saying that you can find this in the department store?
All over the place. Yeah, I think we got the last bit through the Walmart stores, but there's a lot of places you can get it, Lavalin. And I'm telling you what, guys just don't understand what they're missing here, because this stuff, I don't know. Like I said, in the last 8 years, I don't wear any carbon or anything basically other than just being clean and my Lavalin.
Okay. Lavalin.
I do use a scent neutralizer spray for spraying down, like if I've been sitting in the truck or something like that. I'm all for the scent sprays that deodorize the outside of your clothing,
Okay. Well, I just jumped online. It's Lavalin, Lavilin.
Okay.
And so I guess that's how you spell it.
But you want to get the stuff that comes in a green tub.
Okay.
They got it in the bottle too, and the green tub is the cream. They got a foot formula.
Yep.
And a body formula, and the foot formula is stronger than the body formula, and I get both.
Okay. All right. Good to know. All right. It sounds like it was in Esquire magazine, so it sounds like you're quite fashionable, Bill. Pretty funny.
You haven't seen me.
Oh, that's excellent. What other gear do you bring into the woods other than the pre-hunt Lavalin treatment? What else do you?
The way I usually operate is I carry a 5-pound tree stand on my back. In places where they allow screw-ins, I use screw-ins, easy climb. I use this year I'm using helium sticks, and they strap right to my stand, and I can carry 9 of them in and get up 40 feet, no problem, and pull out that same night if I wish, or I can leave the stand and pull the bottom 3 or 4 sections, and until I come back to it.
Gotcha.
But
okay.
I carry that. I carry an emergency kit with me. I have a dry box for medication and things that absolutely can't get wet. My electronics, I carry a few things, electric things with me, like my rangefinder, and sometimes I carry my thermal unit to help me see the blood. I can't see the blood. If I'm there, you turn on the thermal unit and I can see it very plainly.
Gotcha.
So
okay.
Some places are starting to outlaw them, and you have to be very careful not to use it in a place you're not supposed to. So, but I've been using that now for 2 or 3 years here and there. I don't take it with me all the time, but if I want to know if there's deer around my tree in the morning. But I was going to mention, when you're trying to ambush a buck in the morning, and a lot of times these pressured big bucks will be on their bedded by the end of twilight. And most guys are just, saying, man, this is prime time, but the big buck is already bedded down on them. So it makes it very tough to get in there. So guys try coming in an hour early and find out he's already there ahead of time.
Right.
They try it an hour and a half, and be darned if he still isn't in there or other deer. So by waiting until the moon is in the feeding position, and you can do this twice a month for 3 mornings in a row, when they feed from 3 to 4 to 5, then 4 to 5 to 6, and 5 to 6 to 7, the moon is telling me that the big buck's with the herd feeding, because that's where he's supposed to be. And that means he's not near his bedding area, and I get a free ticket in. I by the way, over the years, I have never jumped a big buck going in under those conditions.
Gotcha. Okay.
Well, I really enjoy talking about it, and what I really enjoy is helping people see the service that I offer in my company. Is that I will talk to people when they call me. All of even my past land contract jobs, there's guys always calling me, and I'm still tipping them off to what to do. And, it's kind of like service after the job, because what my specialty is I go to properties and I look at them and analyze them. And if they just want a simple ambush setup, then I pick the best spots on the property, chart it all out for them, which direction to come in from, which direction to leave, when to be there with what wind, and chop it all out for them and all that, or have them do it, tell them where to do it. And then right now I'm batting 100%. I haven't been any place that they haven't scored that year.
Gotcha. Very good. Let's turn to a memorable deer hunt, if we could, Bill. I had asked you in the beginning to think of one or two, or one in particular, and I was wondering where we're going to go on your hunt.
It's probably the last buck that my dad ever got to see. It was also the biggest one that I'd ever shot, and I had figured out this spot on I'd figured out, I'd went into Hunter Ridge, and I was sitting on the ridge, and I watched this big near 160-inch buck get up and walk right with the wind down the ridge and go straight to an apple tree. And I said, oh man, is he ever messing up? I'm going to get him, because he's coming with the wind. So after he left, I got down and moved my stand over there. And all I had to do was make sure I could get in it. And I thought I could. I could see the ledge he was bedded on, but I found out the next afternoon that he could see me because when I started to go in, and when I got to the base of the tree, I heard him crash over the ridge. I blew him out of there.
Gotcha.
So then I was like, that's not going to work. So after thinking it over, I said, I know how I'll get him. I'll go in the morning and I'll watch the ridge up there. And if he don't show up by 11 o'clock, why, I can get down and leave and save me the all-day hunt. But if he shows up, then we get to do this. You see, he's depending on his eyes, and his eyes had it covered. So if he's bedding there and he's watching this area, I call this bed watch behavior, then now his eyes work for me double, because not only is he not seeing me, but his eyes are telling me, if anything, it's okay because there's been no disruption. And the day he came in at, I think, 10:30, it says in my book, and bedded down, and the wait began. And the previous night the previous time he came to the apple tree, it was like 5 o'clock. Well, at 5:30, he come off the ledge up there and come on down with the wind, because he could see until he was chewing on the apple to kind of, keep him from hearing anything. And I drew the bow and let him have it.
Very nice. Excellent. Great.
It just goes to show you that you can figure them out.
Right. Take some time. And I think your descriptions today will be a bit of an eye-opener for a lot of people that are listening, and that there are other things to consider when they go in the woods.
Well, I'm gonna tell you what, there's a lot of things that, if people, what I'm trying to do is to sell people my book and calendar and show them that you don't have to hunt day in and day out and cause problems in your family. You can keep hunting in perspective and in balance, and you don't have to be dedicated to the point of, I'm telling you right now, my heart breaks because of all the time that I did not spend with my son. At the time that it was happening, I didn't notice it. But now he's 26 years old, and I'll never have those years back. And I'm just very fortunate that my wife at one time had threatened me with divorce if I didn't quit, and I love her very much. So I told her, okay, I'll give it up. She said, why don't you write a book?
Yep. And
that'll take your mind off it. And so I wrote the book, and then that generated a bunch of money, and is still generating money. And so now I'm hunting all the time, hunting for a living. I mean, that's what I do every day, all day long.
It worked out. It worked out just fine. That's funny. So, Bill, I have 10 rapid fire questions for you, if you're ready.
Okay.
All right. What's your number one hunting tip of all time?
Number one hunting tip of all time: be well-rounded.
I like it. All right. Number two, what's that one thing that you can't hunt without? The thing that if you leave it in the truck or at home and you forgot to bring it with you, it drives you crazy.
I'm going to say my safety belt, because I won't climb my trees without my safety gear.
Okay. All right. That's excellent advice right there. What's your biggest pet peeve in life?
People using hunting to make money off of gadgetry instead of going through the effort of, figuring out exactly what it is. In other words, shortcuts, there are none in hunting. A guy told me, what's the biggest mistake you can make in hunting? There is no one big mistake, but there's 100 little ones that if you make, it'll spoil it every time.
Right.
That's why you have to be well-rounded. Adequate shot, be able to, if you can't hit the broadside of the barn, but you can get deer close, that's fine. But if you can shoot like crazy and you can't get deer close, neither one's no good. You have to have a happy medium.
Gotcha. All right. Very good. All right. Moving on to the next one. How old are you today, Bill?
How old am I?
Yeah.
I'm 62 years old.
Okay. Being 62 today, what would you tell the 25-year-old Bill Vale?
I've done this, but to take care of your body, because God only gives you one.
All right. Good answer. Very nice. You're at a hunting convention somewhere in the world, and you're talking to a total stranger. They ask you what you do for a living. What do you tell them?
I tell them that I am a professional deer hunter, an author.
Okay. All right. Very good. What did you have for breakfast this morning?
A cup of yogurt.
Okay. Sounds very healthy.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but I have a total gym.
Okay.
And I do my upper body one day, lower body the next. I just had 2 brand new triathlon knees put in, so I'm hoping to be able to hunt till I'm 90.
Okay. Very, very nice. All right. You get a blank billboard. It's a blank canvas. It's on the side of a highway. You put anything you want on it. What would it say?
Well, because I am a Christian, and because my religious beliefs, God is at He's Lord of my life. He is what controls me, and in my beliefs, I believe that no matter what you can do, and even if your life's good, it can be better. If your life's bad, it can at least be tolerable. Mm-hmm. I just believe that knowing Jesus and having Him, to control my thoughts, and I have somebody different to answer to than just my own conscience. I have God's word, and I try to do that the best I can.
Okay. So what would go on the billboard?
Jesus, don't leave Earth without Him.
That's a good one. I like it. All right. If I say the word successful to you, who's the first person that pops into your head and why?
Well, I guess the word successful to me means as long as you're content with your accomplishments, mm-hmm. and as long as you are providing for your family, and you have a small cushion of money. I mean, I don't put faith in money, but money obviously you have to have, to get through life, and whatnot. And basically, I'm not a hard guy to please. If I got a roof over my head, and my wife and I moved into a brand new home 7 years ago, mm-hmm. and it was our dream house. We lived in an old beat up trailer for all those years, and we got a really nice ranch home now, and a lot of us came about through my success in hunting, and plus her job and my book. And this next book, I wanted to tell everybody that the next book that I come out with is going to absolutely shock the hunting world. There has not been a tactic like this developed. Literally been in the front of the faces of men since the beginning of time, and I can't believe that it was in front of my face for 40 years, and I was looking for it, and I still couldn't see it. And we've discovered it and found it, and we're busy testing it right now, field testing it. So far, everything has worked out dead on 100%. And if this ends up being what I'm suspecting it could be, there will be no such thing as an unkillable buck. There will be a way to ambush this buck, no matter what. It's really ironic how this works, and I will be breaking my buddy Josh Franks from Tennessee. Him and I are Master Josh. Him and I are the ones that have developed this, but it is absolutely going to give hunters a way to locate the buck, general location, then to narrow him down to his location. Most of this is being done without ever setting foot on the ground. And then the last step is to go in and set your cameras to make sure you're right. But so far, everything that we've tested has been dead on.
No kidding.
Tons of pictures, tons of proof. It's a bit complicated, but it's not that hard to work. It's like the moon. It's something that you just have to learn it. Right now, I've been doing it so long that all somebody has to do is tell me what phase it is, and I know, when I need to be hunting.
Gotcha. And this is going to be in a book format or something else?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to print it in an electronic book, Josh and I.
Okay.
I'm going to tell you right now, this I think is the greatest discovery in nature of the century. That this is going to take guys who already know a lot about killing deer, and they're going to go, oh my goodness, I can't believe that. And they're going to know right away what to do with it. It's not a matter of not knowing what to do with it. It's a matter of proving it before we introduce it.
Right.
But I guarantee when we introduce this, heads are going to turn, people are going to try it, and they're going to find out, oh my word, it works.
Okay.
I mean, everything about it makes total sense if I could tell you about it. And I wish I could, but I can't right now.
Okay. All right.
Maybe we could do another podcast after it comes out.
I think that's a good idea. All right. All right. Very good. Okay. So what's a typical day in your life look like? Sunrise to sunset.
Okay. I get up very early in the morning, many times, 4 o'clock in the morning. I try to practice getting up early in the morning year round. And I start out by having coffee, and I do a short devotional, and then I practice my song for Sunday at church. I play 11 different instruments, very gifted musician. And the church, I play at my church all the time. I just love it up there playing music. But then after I practice a little bit, I mean, we're talking the off season here.
Mm-hmm.
I'll probably go out and mow my yard, or first of all, I'll do my workout on my total gym.
Okay.
I work out every morning on that. I do lower body one day, upper body the next, and I constantly am trying to keep myself lean and mean, because the lighter you are, the more gear you can carry.
Good point.
Yep. But yeah, and then I'll have some fruit for lunch, and I usually eat a little protein. And if I'm going to have any sweets for the day, I have it right then, so I make sure I burn it off. And then I eat a real light supper. In the evening, my wife works third shift. She gets up, and we spend a couple hours watching TV from about 8 to 10 in the evening before she goes to work.
Okay.
And then I usually stay up after that, plotting and planning on deer hunting areas, mapping. If I have a cyber job, I'll be doing that, or just Googling everything I can think of.
Gotcha. All right. All right. And what's a typical deer hunting day in your life look like? I assume that's a little different.
Well, anymore, because of my, I don't like to go to the woods, leave, go back to the woods and leave. It's how much pressure are you yourself putting on your own hunting area by doing this? That's why when I do properties and stuff, I recommend a perimeter trail with an ATV so that they drive it all the time, throughout the summer, this, that, and the other. When it comes hunting season, I mean, if a hunter pulls up in an ATV and shuts it off, it's game over. The bucks I hunt, he's not going to see. But if the ATV pulls up and just sits there and goes blah, 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 while he's getting into the stand and then takes off, why, a lot of times they'll come right in. It's just, what they're used to. Right. Same with my bait pile hunting. I'll float in on the river making all kinds of noise and bait the pile, and then I'll have a camera there that'll call me. And as soon as I get in the boat, get up around the bend, ding-a-ling-a-ling, I got a deer at the corn already.
Gotcha. That makes sense. It happens all the time.
I don't bait hunt much anymore. I do here in my backyard, well, beyond my backyard, but I mean, out back here, I have a pile there, but it's for does, just for me.
Gotcha. All right. And how does that deer hunting day end? Is it sunrise to sunset in the stand all day kind of thing?
Well, yeah, but usually I'm out of the stand by midday, gutting him out and hauling him home.
Excellent answer. All right, very good. Well, those are the 10 rapid fire questions, Bill. I appreciate you entertaining us for those. Now, you mentioned your book, and it sounds like you have some other things available. Where can we find more information about you and your products after we leave this show?
Well, my website is www.pressuredeerpro.com, and then there's my personal telephone number, which is 269-830-8343. I welcome all people to call if they want to talk about the calendar, if they want an explanation of how it works. I will talk to anybody at any time. One of the things I said when I got into this business that I was going to be someone that people could talk to when they needed help. It does no good to help somebody 3 days after they need it.
Right.
And being available on the phone and saying, hey, I will help you in any situation. If you, like, for instance, with one last story, the deer breaking into the wind. This is one of my more brilliant strategies for the angry neighbor.
Okay.
Whatever the property line is, you want the wind blowing from your property toward the neighbors.
Okay.
Okay. You want to hunt right on the line, and you want to build a screen so you cannot shoot over the line. If they're coming through the fence, you let them come through the hole, get just beyond you, and then you let them have it, and they'll spring forward because the danger presented itself from the rear, and now they're going into the wind. And not only will all your deer end up on the center of your property, but every deer he shoots is going to end up on your property as well. And now we're meeting at the fence, and you're in the power of the negotiation seat. Well, yeah, you can come over here as long as when I shoot one, I can go over there.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
And see how we got onto that was hunting places, man, where there were prickers and rose bush and swamps. And if they went down in that, man, it was almost wasn't worth it how bad tore up you would get.
Right.
And so we realized that when the wind was blowing back into the cover, they would always break to the field.
Very interesting. That's fascinating. So when can we expect this new book to come out?
Well, I'll tell you, you'll be the first to know. What Josh and I were planning on doing was field testing it with as many of the masters this year as we could, and releasing our results. We've got 4 masters, including myself, that are all pursuing 200-inch bucks.
Okay. So
we've all put our heads together on all of them, and we're just hoping that what we've come up with is I'm sure there'll be some tweaking, and there'll be some things that might have to be ironed out, but for the most part, everything I've checked's been dead on, and I am certainly convinced that this will change the way that hunters look at their hunting area, review it until the end of the age. Okay.
All right. So you're thinking midsummer next year you'll have this out, or springtime?
Probably for sure by midsummer.
Midsummer.
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of it's going to have to do with, because what last thing Josh and I wanted to do was come out with it prematurely, and have a bunch of holes in it.
Right.
So we're just making sure that there aren't any holes. So far, there hasn't been a single one.
Okay. All right.
So I am very, very pleased and just tickled pink with anticipation. This, along with the moon, it isn't even going to be fair anymore.
I'm intrigued. I have to admit, I am intrigued by the way you've sold this already. So Very, very cool. Bill, this has been an honor and a pleasure to have you on the show. I sincerely appreciate you coming on and sharing stories and telling us about the J-hook and your everything that you have to do with planning out a hunt and aerial representation and finding the path of least resistance and entertaining us with everything that you've learned over the last 63 years. It's been absolutely pleasure.
Well, my book is 500 pages,
Wow.
and it is packed with information. As a matter of fact, as far as 2 or 3 times now they did a study. I've never won the best book of the year because my grammar isn't all it could be. I guess there's some editing. It wasn't quite right. But they all have said it's the most bang for the buck.
Gotcha. All right. Very good to know. We'll, I'm sure people listen to this will go seek that out. If it's that got as much information in that book and more so than what we discussed today.
Well, I'll tell you what I'd like to do, Jay.
Sure.
Text me your address, and I'll be for having me on the show. I'll send you a couple books, and you can check it out.
Okay, that's a deal. That's a deal, Bill. I will take you up on that offer. That sounds fun.
Okay, and a couple calendars. All right, my friend.
All right,
well,
good.
God bless you. Thank you so much for letting my voice be heard, and just let everybody know out there that it's more important to me to help somebody and have them score than it is for me to score myself. I've had my time in the sun many times, and now I get more joy out of helping families not split up over hunting and watching guys be victorious and realize that, they can do it over and over and over again, so they don't feel that like once in a lifetime pressure.
Well, thanks to Bill Vale for joining us on the Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast. Hopefully you enjoyed that interview. I certainly did. Shed some light on some aspects of some tools and strategies and tips with the moon that I really had not thought about much relative to hunting high-pressure bucks. So hopefully you can take a few of those tactics and put them in your bag, tricks, and be successful as Bill has learned to be successful over the last 35 years. Dusty, do we have a Chubby Tines tip of the week?
Yeah, we do, Jay.
The Chubby Tines tip of the week is sponsored by Morse's Sporting Goods. Firearms, used firearms, bows, used bows, located at 85 Kentucky Falls Road in Hillsborough, New Hampshire. Give Jim a call at 603-464-3444, morsessportinggoods.com. Your dollars go further in New Hampshire. There's no sales tax. Morse's Sporting Goods.
Deer come out of velvet. It's that time of year that the velvet's coming off, and a deer that comes out of velvet changes their way of life once the hard antler sets in. Your visibility on your deer, especially mature bucks, it decreases by, I'm going to say, a 60% margin. They become more alert to what's going on. Their feeding pattern's going to change. There's a whole lot going on in a deer's life when they go from velvet to hard antler. That's something that is often overlooked, and it's one of them things where you can almost play a mental game on you if you're not accustomed to the velvet to hard antler deer change. It'll throw a loop in your whole program. If you got a deer you're seeing daylight hours pretty frequently in velvet, and now all of a sudden he's nocturnal, he's not visiting the same open field that you've been glassing from the road and seeing him at, it just changes your whole mentality on how to survive now. It's almost like the survival mode kicks in when them hard antlers come on. It's so weird, and it's such a unique thing, and it's a challenge for a hunter, and it's just a whole different ball game once the hard antler sets in. Now, I'm not saying that deer can't be hunted and killed. Don't get me wrong. But that deer is going to change his ways a little bit, and he's going to move in a different pattern, and he may not feed at the times that he's been feeding. When a deer is in velvet, they're feeding to not only put nutrition in the body, but the excess nutrition goes into their antler. And any deer is kind of like a bodybuilder. They want to put enough nutrition in to make the antler grow more and better every year. And it's like they figure that out. If a deer could talk, he'd tell you, I eat this, this, and this to make my antlers grow because I know it's excess nutrition. Once I pump so much into my system, the excess nutrition goes to my antler. So at that point in time, throughout their velvet, they're feeding themselves, trying to, not necessarily stay healthy and alive, but they're trying to grow the antlers, just like anything else that's young and it grows bone. They got to eat, and that's what they're doing. And now that the hard antler set in, that excess nutrition is no longer needed. So now it's just back it down a little bit, keep yourself full, and eat when they need to, and that's it. So just keep that in mind.
Great tip, man. The velvet shed.
Crazy time of year for a whitetail hunter to experience what's going on in the woods. It's unique, but yet it's a challenge. And once you figure it out, you'll get back on a pattern for a little while here till the rut kicks in, and you can get back on that deer. You just got to figure out what he's doing different now.
Yeah. Excellent, my friend. Very, very good tip of the week there, Dusty. I appreciate that. I'd like to say thank you to Morse's Sporting Goods for sponsoring the Chubby Tines Tip of the Week. I also like to say thank you to all of our sponsors. We deeply appreciate their support, and please go check out our sponsors. If you're thinking about buying any of these products in these categories or shopping at any stores, please go check these guys out. So I'd like to say thank you to Advanced Takedown Tree Stands, Covert Scouting Cameras, the Horny Buck Seed Company, Morse's Sporting Goods, and back on board is the Scent Lock Enforcer. So take control of your odor footprint with the Scent Lock Enforcer, your personal ozone generator. Dusty, where can we find you when you're not hanging out here in the studios with me?
Shoot me an email, dusty@bigbuckregistry.com. You can look me up on Instagram and Twitter @ChasingAntler, Facebook.com/Chubby Tines Outdoors. Jay, where can the people reach out to you when you're not on the mic?
Likewise, you can shoot me an email, jay@bigbuckregistry.com, and you can visit us on Facebook, facebook.com/bigbuckregistry. We're also on Twitter, which is twitter.com/bigbuckregistry. We're also on Instagram, instagram.com/bigbuckregistry, and YouTube, which is youtube.com/bigbuckregistry. On YouTube, you can listen to all of our podcasts in their entirety. As far as videos are concerned, it's a boring video, but the audio content is there, so you can actually listen to our podcast. You can also listen to all of our live shows that we've done on Thursday nights when we do them, and we've gone back and re-interviewed a lot of our previous guests we had on the show just to put a face to a voice, let's put it that way. You can always listen to our show on other places as well, not just YouTube. We're found on iTunes, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, Stitcher, and Blueberry. And if you would like to submit a buck to our page for consideration and be featured on our page in front of 250,000 diehard deer hunting fans, all you have to do is go to bigbuckregistry.com/mybuck, and all of the instructions will be right there. I think that's pretty much everywhere we're at. I think that's a wrap, Dusty.
That's a whole lot of big buck, Jay.
Sure is. I'm Jay Scott.
I'm Dusty Phillips.
And this is the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. We'll see you next week.
Can't wait.